Well, hello. This is Josh, the creator of Huddle Genius. Today I'm going to be recording a video which is going to showcase the changes that have happened in Huddle Genius since version 1.01D all the way up to 1.01I. And at the end of this, we are going to do a draft on Underdog. So that is our plan here. If you want to skip over the recaps of changes, you are welcome to, skip to that draft. But firstly, like I said, we are going to go ahead and look at the changes that we have had since July 29th. That is 6 days ago. Now, we've had a lot of changes to Huddle Genius, particularly because best ball is fast and furious here. It is basically a month, and when that month is over, the best ball rush is over. So there will be a lot of changes here. Firstly, let's go over 1.01D. I'm sorry, we're at 1.01I, but I'm going to go over these changes. In 1.01D, we introduced the teams, the team manager, and the helmets, which was probably arguably one of the biggest changes we've had. Next to the players, you can see there's helmets. Very cool. Yes, indeed. But we also have the team manager, which if you go inside of the player section and you go to this configuration tab here, you can actually configure exactly how you want each team to have for targeting, which I think is very, very exciting. You can say however many you want. As you can see here, we have 2 to 6 for most teams. We have 0 to 2 for the teams that I personally think the quarterbacks don't necessarily need to be paired. Like you can see here, I have like the Bills 0 to 2, so I don't care as much with Josh Allen if we get paired or not. And I've done that for a few teams. But because we still have the 2, we can still have a targeting of more than 0. It's just there as like a guide. The other cool thing about this is you have the exposure modifier where you can actually... So here's the Steelers. So you can actually fine-tune your team exposure to a specific team. So let's say we just wanted to have like 50% for the Steelers. We would just fade them across the board as a team. Now, of course, this is for people that really want to control things even down to a level that you really couldn't previously. But now you can. There's so many layers that we can manage our exposures that, if you want to go with the team, you certainly can. So the QB targets also, I was just talking about that, but we have the max matching on team, which makes it so we will not have more than a certain amount of players on a team. Right now I have it set to 6, which is pretty hard to believe we'd have 6 on a team anyway. But if for some reason you wanted less, you certainly could. You certainly could. So continuing with other changes here. The other changes in that update had to do with the drafting logic, which there's been a lot of different drafting logic updates since then. I'm going to scroll up here and look at what else is going on here. The coloration of players is another thing that got changed. And by that, I mean these positions. Before they did not have colors, now they do. Wide receivers are orange, running backs are blue, green, tight ends are blue, and quarterbacks are green. And this color scheme actually matches what we have on Underdog Fantasy. Other sites may be a little different, just FYI. Going forward a little bit more here, looking at what we have. More improvements to the soft targeting for quarterbacks. That's been a big part of what we've had going on right now. Is mainly just the way we handle targeting. These helmets are messed up at the bottom. So let's just pretend we're not going to draft right now, but just let's click on this. Let's say we're the 5th pick. So what this is we've allowed better random targeting here that was not happening as well. And we actually are now trying to prioritize targets that work, if that makes sense. So if a quarterback we cannot find enough pairings with, we will actually move on to the next one. Which is really cool, because before we would just run through this once, and if the pairing didn't work out that well, you're kind of stuck with targets that weren't necessarily that great. And I think that was very important. Probably one of the more important changes I made. Speaking of targeting, another cool thing that we have, we're going to reload it here really quick. One of the things we had with targeting now is that we allow you to ignore shared exposures here. That is in the preferences. So if you go to preferences and you go to stacking, down here at the bottom you have an option to ignore shared exposures for soft targeting. If this is checked, you will completely ignore shared exposures for your soft targets, which honestly is a very great way to improve the amount of soft targeting you'll get. And that actually does completely ignore whatever setting you have here. However, this setting still will check against other players once your targeting's picked, if that makes sense. So it will ignore... I don't recommend setting this to 100% because that will be your alternative option. I think leave this at a number you like and then check this if you seriously just don't care about shared exposures when soft targeting. Another thing we added in 1.01H is a handcuff report. That is in the insights, analysis, way down here at the bottom, handcuff report. So what this does is it shows you your most common handcuffs that you have. Basically, this would be, you know, hey, if Drake London's out, we got a little bit of Mooney, 4%. This is our percentage of teams too. So we got like 4% of our teams have these two together. As you can see using Huddle Genius, we don't have anything too crazy here. If you drafted a bunch of these by hand, maybe you'd have a whole different scenario in front of you. Of course, for anything to be listed here, it has to at least be twice. Otherwise, you know, you just have a million things here. And I think we are just about done. Yeah, the rest has all been quarterback targeting updates. As I said, that was something that I was very focused on because the quarterback targeting and the soft targeting is kind of the centerpiece of how Huddle Genius works. So I don't like to... that's something I really wanted to make sure was working well. So a lot of the updates were just like these background logical, you know, code debugging type things that needed to be done with that to make sure we get the proper quarterback targeting and the way that should work. Because again, that is like the centerpiece of how this works. So now that we're all set, we are going to go ahead and draft. I've talked here for about 7 minutes. We're gonna start going here. As you can see here, using Huddle Genius, we can already see the strategy down at the bottom. We'll be using the modified 0 RB strategy. And depending on where I pick in the round, that may not be that important. The reason I say that is if I am pick 3 or above. If I'm pick 3 or above, basically we're going to be... One moment here. What I'm trying to say is if I'm pick 3 or above, the way I have it set up is then we'll basically just pick by ADP. So then it may not matter that much because, you know, let's say I'm the second pick, I get Bijan Robinson, then we're not really doing a modified 0 or modified hero RB. Modified 0 RB. All right, here we go. We're going to go. It's time. It is time to draft. And we're going to wait for it to fill. Yeah, there are preferences you can set that override the given strategy. Not only can you have just positional completely ignored in favor of stacking, but then like in the first round you can set, hey, I'm the first pick, I'm gonna pick whatever the first pick is. Like that, you know, I have it so if I get the top 3, I'm gonna just pick by ADP because you don't get that often. And then once we're past that, then I kind of let it open up. And this is filling up real quick. Here we go. Let's see where we end up here. I'm pick 2, so this is exactly what I was just saying. Because I'm pick 2, you're going to see that, there it is, the ADP is in front of us. Something that is really interesting right now is that I'm hiding Jamar Chase. Now, the reason that would be is that I believe, and I'm not 1,000,000% sure here, but I think one of these is hiding Jamar Chase by shared exposure. That would be my best guess. One of these soft targets or quarterback targets. Because if Jamar Chase drops here, I'm going to pick him. And keep in mind, you can always use the search box inside of Huddle Genius to manually put in something that you want to draft that's not here. Now, you should only be doing this in like the case of emergencies. I've only had to do it like, I don't know, 1 out of 20, 30, 40 drafts maybe. Those are some wildly different numbers, but it's a pretty big, you know, it's a pretty wild difference. I really hope I get Bijan here, by the way. I will take Jamar Chase if they do not take Jamar Chase, though. I'm waiting here. We are on the clock. I'm not even like a big Bijan believer. Okay, we are taking Bijan. But that said, I do not have Bijan hardly at all. That's why up here you see an A. Because he is one of my least picked first round players, and that is not on purpose. I just have not gotten him that much. We are going to be picking George Kittle here on the bounce back. We're going to be picking George Kittle very, very early, as you can see. We are actually going to be picking him at pick 23, and he goes 38. Now, that is just the way that our targeting set up right now. We're pretty aggressive. You can obviously tone that down if you're like, hey, that's nuts. I'm not picking a player. You know, I'm not picking a player 15 picks early in the second round. Yeah, you probably shouldn't. I have mine pretty cranked up, but you can set that. When I made Huddle Genius, every single thing I made is, hey, what would you want as a user? And I never made it as if, no, everybody has to use this the same way. So if you think that's a little crazy going that far, you can definitely tone that down. I would not blame you. Because the first time you actually see your maximum reach used, you're like, oh man, that seems pretty crazy. And like I was saying when this started too, I said, you know, I mentioned that we wouldn't actually have a modified 0 RB strategy if we got an early pick, and I was right. It was exactly what I said, because our ADP, we just picked by ADP because we were under a certain pick, if that makes sense. Because like I said at the beginning, if I get the first, second, or third pick, I just want to pick what's there. I don't want the program to get cute, you know, and I pick something that's like 4 picks later. Because you just don't get the first pick that often. You know, it's one of those, hey, do you want the exposure? Because if you skip picking the first pick, even half the times you might get the first pick, you're going to be way underexposed to the first pick, just for an example. And honestly, that goes for any of the picks. But the earlier it is, the more so that's the case, because you don't have the choice. Jamar Chase is simply not falling. And Bijan actually is really starting to rise in ADP. I've actually seen Bijan go first before. So again, very happy getting him just because of the exposure here. We just don't have Bijan. I like to have everything covered here. I just realized too, this team, the way it's building right now, both of these quarterback targets are stacked versus each other in week 15. So very cool. Very cool. I've done a lot of these. I've never actually had that happen. It doesn't actually intentionally try to do that. It wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing if it intentionally tried to do it, but it doesn't go out of its way to do that. Be something to consider in a future update. You know, if you had a matchup that, you know, 2 quarterbacks were paired, maybe it could bump them up a little bit. Be like, hey, they play each other in one of your preferred weeks. All right, we will be getting George Kittle here super duper early. These people are going to think I've lost my mind, and you know what? Maybe I have. All right, now we're going to be getting a wide receiver. We have Marvin Harrison. We have Devontae Adams. We have Mike Evans. So it's going to be one of these 3. You know, the weird thing is that Kittle actually had like the most point per game last year, but it still feels wrong. It still feels wrong picking him over the other 2. All right, Devontae Adams there coming off the board for us. Our uniqueness score is kind of nosediving after Kittle and Devontae, even though he started pretty good with Bijan. We're going to be going back to running back now. This would have been our original 0 RB running back if it wasn't for our pick in the first round. But I already explained that probably enough times to, you know, explain why that happened. So basically, if we let this run as intended, we would add wide receiver, Kittle, wide receiver, then one of these running backs, and then Juwan Jennings, and then wide receiver, quarterback. We would not have had a second running back till round 9, but again, because of the way I have my ADP set up in the first round, we have that locked in. I'm not missing one of those picks. It kind of screws you with your strategy, and it can also screw with your targeting. But, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. For instance, it would, if you were going off of, because it eliminates your first round more or less for targeting if it falls in that range. So, for instance, I would not pick Justin Jefferson if it would have had JJ McCarthy here. Now, I could still manually choose to do that, keep in mind. But like if I was the second pick and we have it set so we're picking by ADP, that's just the way it would have went. Just something to keep in mind when you restrict the first round. But I honestly do believe you should, because I've said a million times, like, you're not gonna always get the first, you know, you're not gonna get, especially even if you're doing 150 drafts, you're only gonna have mathematically so much of the opportunity to pick, you know, Jamar Chase. Like, pick him. You may not have the chance again for, you know, the next 20, 24 drafts you do. So coming up next, we are 6 picks away. We have James Cook and Chuba Hubbard queued up. We'll be picking whoever it is. My guess is it'll be Chuba, but we'll see. We're basically ending up with, almost like a regular general best ball right now. Let's see here. Like our lineup's actually being very interesting. Man, this guy's taking forever. He picked Jaden Daniels. Is that weird? No, he's not. He just kind of picked whatever. Still might be able to get James Cook here. I actually would have interest in getting him. I do have him at 10%. I actually have Chuba less. I don't know why in my head for a second I thought I didn't have a lot of James Cook, but apparently I do. Alright, wow, we actually got James Cook 3 picks later. That's so cool. But now we're going to make up for it by picking Juwan Jennings 16 picks early. This is going to be an interesting team. I have not had a San Francisco 49er team in a while. And after Juwan Jennings, we will be picking 2 wide receivers back-to-back. Keep in mind, if they're not soft targeting, we'll be pretty much right on ADP based on tier. You know, Huddle Genius isn't too bad on, you know, it doesn't get too crazy outside your soft targets unless you control your soft targets a little bit better also. Okay, now we're going to queue up these wide receivers really quick. Definitely lots of options here. Buka. All right, we are going to be waiting here for the next 19. All right, 17 picks away. We are chilling. Sorry about that. I had to run and see what was going on. My dog was barking. So yeah, 15 picks away. We got our wide receivers queued up here. Diggs, Reed, Downs, Purcell. I think right now we're in a pretty good spot. I like the team. We have a bit of uniqueness here going on. How many people are going to have a 49ers Tennessee Titans team, right? I'm not saying it's going to work, but how many people are going to have it? Who knows? And my philosophy with Huddle Genius is we're guessing the code, right? What is the code to the safe? We got so many numbers we can guess. What is the right one? Because there is one combination that's going to win the whole thing. And more than likely, it's going to be a combination nobody else has. You know, there's going to be 10 people tied for first with the exact same thing. Yes, there's going to be certainly common pieces that get you there. But what wins you the whole thing, that's going to be something else. So we did go up there a little bit on our uniqueness score because of Juwan Jennings, not super highly owned, I guess. Yeah, 7.5, not kind of in the middle. And now we just wait. You can see the fists in the air here. Plenty of choices here that may, you know, got the matchups going on. And as you can see, we're sorted by tier here, tier 5, tier 6, tier 7. Digs would be kind of cool. I like having no digs. I don't know if I'm going to get them or not. Oh, actually, no, I'm going to get them for sure. Yeah, sweet. That's exciting. That's somebody I don't have either. So yeah, getting Diggs and Bijan on the same team, very exciting. Oh, he just went? Come on, man. That's unlucky. All right, we're going to pick Reed. He just went. Like, they actually reached down for him, too. They actually went down to get him. Man. All right. Fair enough. Downs is gone. Are we? Oh, no, Downs is still there. Downs is who we have right here. We don't really have any reason to go with anybody else. He is our last tier 5 that we have checked here. So I guess we're going to go with Downs next. Downs, by the way, is pretty far down on this list, speaking of down. Very far down, but my tier list has him as a tier 5, so it likes him. We're going to get him. There he is. Josh Downs joining the rank. Now we're going to Purdy. Should be good on Purdy. He goes at 103. We're picking him at 95. We also have 2 of his best receivers, so I don't know why anybody would compete with us, but you never know. Never say never in drafts. Purdy here also, by the way, only 3.8%. And look at that. Look at those stacks we got going on. We're going to have the Titans taking on Purdy and all these 49ers. Week 15. Getting a little bit with the Colts there in week 16. And here, by the way, you can see exactly how the shared exposure works with the ignoring. So normally we would not pick Juwan Jennings with Brock Purdy because of shared exposure, but because I have that checked, we got him. We got no problem here. And that only goes with soft targets. So, you know, obviously you're not going to have Purdy anyway unless he was targeted as a quarterback. So the soft target, like ignoring the shared exposure just opens up more soft targets. Like that's my point. It kind of can work both ways. Like, you know, you may not get as far. Maybe you want like actually the 3rd receiver, the 4th receiver, because we might always be getting those early ones. I forgot to mention too that the exposure for those players still is respected. So if we have too much Juwan Jennings, he would not show up here. Like, just on his own, just the exposure. This just only ignores the shared exposure setting. So it is a different thing. It is something to remember. Yeah, very excited here. This will actually be, if I know we were trying to get Diggs. I know that fell away. But if we had had Diggs, Robinson, and Purdy, that would have been 3 players that have, like, low exposure. That would have been pretty exciting. But we should be jumping up here either way on our exposure uniqueness, which is great. Very excited. Anytime we get something different, I like that. I think that's very exciting.
GG and I are about to go on a 72-hour trip. Yes,
so here we are. 6 picks away. Want to take a quick look here at my soft targets. Trying to see what I'm picking after Purdy. Okay, going to wide receiver after I got it. And then there's actually a couple rounds where we don't have any particular goals, which will probably be filling in running backs, tight ends. Wide receivers are pretty much all spoken for at this point, so we probably won't have any wide receivers other than that the next round. And then it'll just be the targets, it looks like, according to my math. Because we only have room for 2 more wide receivers after that one. So here's Purdy. Purdy joining the ranks, bumping up to a B-. Sweet, and this is that receiver I was just talking about. We got Mooney. Kupp is there now. I never get Cooper Kupp, man. I wish I did. Shaheed really gone early. Keon Coleman gone. Trey Harris is there. So it's going to be Trey Harris or Darnell Mooney unless both of them get picked. No, we're good. We're going to get one of the 2. I noticed Ayuk is in here. I think Ayuk I might have faded. And the reason for that is Ayuk, I'm not sure when they're going to be playing or not. And all right, we are getting Mooney. Sweet. Status for week 1 uncertain. Okay. All right, now we are 20 picks away. And as I was saying, we're going to be filling in those running backs, tight ends. We do have 4 running backs we still got to get and 2 tight ends. The good thing with Huddle Genius is your playbook, your plan, it's set the moment you click that button at the top to start your draft. Like, you know exactly what your roster is going to be. You know your targets. You know everything's already laid out in front of you. You don't have to think much. If you're thinking too much, you're doing something wrong. You shouldn't be thinking. You should be sitting back and relaxing and clicking on what you see. And hopefully being ready for your picks. So here we got 3 running backs: Charbonnet, Spears, Scatibo, or Scatable, or however you want to pronounce it. You know, we could probably end up with Spears, but maybe we'll get Charbonnet here, depending. Charbonnet we have as tier 5, the other 2 we have as tier 6. This actually really does not like him, Scatibo. Like, if I switch tier lists once in a while, but if I had this tier list all the time, I would not get him hardly at all because he's pushed back pretty far. Like, for where his ADP is, ouch. All 3 of these running backs I don't have a ton, so I'm fine with any of them. This will actually be our 3rd running back. We have, I mean, you can see we're kind of anchored by Bijan and James Cook for our 2 running backs. And I don't mind this range. I think this is kind of a range where maybe you can get something out of it. You know, Charbonnet if Kenneth Walker gets hurt, or, you know, Tyjae Spears if Pollard gets hurt. Like, you got these opportunities. And Scatibo, who knows? Maybe he's good right away. He may be used right away. He's gone now. Oh no, he's still there. Who got picked? Oh, Charbonnet got picked. Interesting. So Tyjae is at the top of our list. We also are picking underneath his ADP. I think that's probably what we're going to end up with. And that's fine. We have a Titan stack we're going to be building. So absolutely fine. Kind of works with what we're already doing. Okay, he's gone. Is it going to be Scatibo? Nobody's picking him. Like, still there, 9 picks later. My guess is that he's going to get picked. I just have a hard time believing somebody's not going to pick. Because, you know, people are going to just see the value and just say, hey, I'm taking him. Nobody's picking him. He's 10 picks late. Let's just get him, right? You may as well. This person only has 1 running back. I bet they're going to do it. Does not. Okay, does this one? That's crazy, that guy. Wow, that's super late. Okay, I'm getting him. We got him. Sweet. All right, here comes our tight end here. This will be our 2nd tight end. Njoku, Kraft. Tyler Warren's gone. Kincaid is gone. Oh, Kincaid is there. Oh, I'm on the clock already. Njoku is? Cameron Ward will be up next for us. And once we get Cameron Ward, we'll have the last piece of our puzzle here as far as what we will be drafting. You know, that's the last big piece that we need. Cam Ward here, we are picking at 143. He goes 156. Shouldn't be a problem. As I've said, you know, the way I like to have my settings, I like to allow the soft targeting to be very aggressive. Gets you unique teams, and then as far as everything else, I kind of play it by the books. As you can see, we're not going crazy on anything else. We're just saying what our best tier is and going by the ADP. We don't get cute. Another thing you could always do too, if you didn't want so many soft targets, you could lower that, and then you don't have to feel like, hey, I'm, you know, 6 or 7 picks I'm doing really early. You could change it to like 2 or 3, which would probably, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but if you ever feel uncomfortable about how far you're going or how much, you can always reduce that. You can also change your reach just completely and say, hey, I'm not I don't want to pick anybody more than 6 picks early, and you can do that. The only problem is down here at the bottom, you may not have many soft targets. You're going to be eliminating a lot of choices, is what I'm trying to get at. I mean, if you think about a draft and where you're picking and what's going to be there, 6 picks within each of your picks each round, it's kind of a short list. It's basically 6 players every time, or, you know, around that number. All right, we are now 21 minutes into this. We are 9 picks away. Cam Ward queued up. Got a team that we are pretty much done with wide receivers. We got the two already queued up that we'll be taking. We're going to be getting 1 more tight end, 3 more running backs, and then that's pretty much it. We already know where we're going with this draft. Definitely an interesting team. It definitely does not look like any of the teams I've drafted lately, so I'm kind of excited about that. Happy to get Bijan, happy to get, you know, the 49ers, you know, just to have something a little different. I've gotten the Titans a few times. I think Cam Ward, yeah, he's at 11.2. I've had Titan stacks a few times. The program likes them. Mainly because this quarterback kind of falls in that range where you get, I don't know, it's almost like you're picking where you can get them kind of easily. But I mean, that goes for a lot of these later quarterbacks. Benson. Bigsby, oh man, Bigsby is never there. Is White? No. Algier? Algier it is. Say, like, I never get Bigsby. Like, I always see his name, and I start to queue him up, and he's like, he's gone. He's gone every time. So that makes me think, like, my tier list that I'm using a lot of times may just not be aggressive enough on Bigsby. I don't know. But I have a lot of ETN. So I do have a lot of the other Jaguar guy. Let's hope I'm picking the right one. Last year, you would probably not want either. Sure, 4, okay. Well, this is a nice meaty group of running backs here. All of these are kind of around our upcoming pick in ADP. Kind of just depends on what everybody else is picking too. Like we know we're not picking any more wide receivers, so other than those last, you know, Lockett and Restrepo, Xavier Restrepo. These names are hard to pronounce. I was sitting there calling like the Saints quarterback like Shao or something. Then I was watching NFL Network and talking about him, and they said Shuck. I was like, what? That's how you pronounced it the whole time? I wasn't even close. I wasn't even close. Can definitely learn a lot of pronunciations, you know, with football. I believe that Bijan wants his name pronounced differently. Maybe I'm saying it wrong now. I thought it was like Bijan or Bijan, but not Bijan. Bijan, but I could be wrong on that. Thought I read something about that. You gotta stay in touch to know how to pronounce these things. Why is Tootin there, by the way? Tootin is like 30 picks. Okay, Tootin just went. I was gonna say, Tootin was like 30 picks late. Like, I was looking to see, was there news? Like, why would Tootin be dropped back so far? I also don't understand why, like, this tier list has Jerome Ford as tier 8. Can somebody explain that to me? Isn't Jerome Ford going to be basically leading that backfield? Like, am I missing something? I didn't make this tier list, by the way. This is just a tier list I, you know, grabbed. You know, I like to swap them all once in a while, but sometimes I get these tier lists. I'm like, why? Because Judkins isn't going to be playing. I mean, are we thinking the other running back's going to be getting all the work? All right, here we go. Acklar we're getting. Let's get him. Acklar here, playing against the Giants week 15. Now we're going back to running back yet again. Wow, that went quick. Looks like it's going to be right. Right? Yes, it's right. Brendo was gone, so we didn't have to worry about that. All right, now we're going tight end. We got Gesicki up there at the top of the list. Gesicki probably will be gone, but we're just going to go ahead and just, you know, star them all since it's going to be a little while. Kate Otten, Arroyo, Mason Taylor. Say who? I don't think I've ever seen that name. Well, I don't have to worry about it. They're gone. And Tavian Sanders, okay. We'll definitely get one of those. Talk about a range of numbers there. This will also be our last tight end. If you're looking at what we have in front of us, we're going to be picking a tight end, and then we're going to be picking those last 2 soft targets, and then we are done. Again, using this product, using Huddle Genius, the second I hit, you know, I'm pick 2, everything in front of us got populated. We pretty much knew exactly what we were doing from beginning to end. I put in 0 ounce of thought into this. This Huddle Genius is already doing all the work for me. It's making sure our bye weeks don't overlap, our shared exposures are not too high, our exposures are not too high, our positional strategies working out. Like, it's about, you couldn't ask for it easier. I mean, outside of Huddle Genius literally clicking on your screen and picking your players for you, could not get much easier. Okay, Gesicki and Sanders still here on the board for us. I'll say I don't have Gesicki at all. I don't know why, like, Gesicki, to me, I'm a little surprised that he's so far back. He actually ended up being pretty good last year. I think so. Otten too, when those players were out. Mike Evans and Godwin were out or whatever, and Otten, like, really stepped up. It's exciting to have a tight end on a pass-heavy team, because if there's some weird situation where it's like, hey, we have to pass and our wide receivers are hurt, okay, well, we're going to be passing to this tight end, and these tight ends have done that before. So it's like, well, we know exactly what they'd be doing. I actually had K-Dot on my fantasy football team last year, and I had him that week where it was like, okay, they're going to be thrown to K-Dot and, you know, 20 times. Am I going to get Gesicki? That'd be awesome. Just for some more variety on this team. I like that. Because right now we're at a C. I'd love to see that, you know, be a little better grade here. Okay. Gesicki or Sanders? It is going to be Gesicki. That is very exciting. Look at that. Going up to C+. If you get that in school, I wouldn't be proud. But, you know, C+ I'll take right now. We're going to be getting Lockett, then getting Restrepo, and then we are done. That is the end of it. I can go ahead and star these 2 right now. And it is truly just that simple. Lockett, yeah, I was to say Lockett I have a little bit of. Okay, there's Lockett. And then we'll just be picking the last Tennessee player. Very cool. I did not miss any of my soft targets this draft. I like that. You know, our targets were Kittle, Juwan Jennings with Purdy. And with the Titans, we had Lockett, Restrepo, which we're getting right now. We did not really have any issues. We have tons of matchups. You can see these fists in the air. Those are all matchups we have going on. So, you know, if we just glance through these really quickly, our 2 quarterback targets are against each other week 15. You got the Bengals versus the Dolphins. That's not a big one for us, but, you know, that's basically Gesicki and right here. That's nothing too exciting. Washington versus the Giants. That's Austin Eckler, Scatibo. Again, nothing too exciting. Atlanta taking on the Rams. That'd be Devontae Adams versus Algier, week 17. Bijan versus the Rams. Yes, that's right. We have 3. I just noticed we have 3 Atlanta players. That's crazy. We have Bijan, Darnell, and Algier. And that's pretty exciting too. We have a handcuff here with Robinson. That's very cool. I don't know if I have that. I showed you the handcuff report at the beginning of this video. I don't know if I have Algier and Bijan. No, I'm sure I don't, because I only picked Bijan like twice. Probably not then. So yeah, fairly interesting. We have like a narrative for almost every player on this team. Other than Jaden Reed, who is not paired with anybody. Just random Jaden Reed at pick 6. That's fine. Not every player needs a narrative. And honestly, if we didn't have 15, 16, and 17 checked as matchups, we would not have so many of these. I chose to do that. You could just set it to week 17. You could set it to nothing if you don't care about matchups. You could also just not have matchups matter as far as sorting goes. That would also avoid that. You know, you don't... Matchups, you can just have be informational, or you can have it actually dictate and kind of help, you know, help guide your draft towards matchups. That's totally up to you how you want to set up Huddle Genius. Again, when designing Huddle Genius, it was what does the user want, not what do I want as the developer. So that's why built from the ground up, you add your own tiers, you set your own settings. It might make it a little more hefty for setting up the program compared to other programs, but when you set up Huddle Genius, it is truly your program. You are making it run the way you want it to run. And here we go, the last pick coming off the board here, 1.2%, Xavier. And that is it. That is it for our draft. I'm going to go ahead here and switch over to Huddle Genius so you can see this. This is actually our 81st draft. So we're going to go ahead and hit the confirm complete. And that is it. It has now been logged into our system. And what's so cool about Huddle Genius is that the moment we restart this program, we will actually have that built into our exposures, the draft we just did. We don't have to download them for Underdog. That is the way I have it set up. Again, you can choose to just get your own exposures from Underdog, which is honestly recommended. I don't know why these helmets are messed up. I'm gonna have to look at that sometime. You can see like the helmets. Oh, now they're right. Okay. But yeah, so what I was saying though, like now with the exposures instantly, you know, I can go to the players, go over to Atlanta, and see Bijan up to 3.7, went up from that 2 point whatever it was before. So like I was saying, these things are live. The moment you finish them, you can basically have them imported automatically. So very exciting. Yeah, very cool. All right, well, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you learned a little bit about Huddle Genius, and hopefully it'll help you make a decision about what you think about Huddle Genius. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.